The text came in just after midnight while I was brushing my teeth, and at first I thought it was from my sister. It said, "Don't come to the back door. He's still out there." I remember staring at the screen with toothpaste in my mouth, reading it again and again, like maybe the words would rearrange themselves into something normal. The number wasn't saved, but it had a local area code. For a second, I honestly thought it was a weird joke, or somebody drunk and texting the wrong person, because that kind of thing happens sometimes. My sister had a habit of changing phones every few months too, so I texted back, "Who is this?" The reply came almost instantly. I said, "Don't go to the back door. Lock the front and turn off your kitchen light." That got my attention fast. I spat into the sink and stood there listening to my apartment. It was a small place on the edge of town, one floor, old hardwood, cheap blinds, the kind of rental where every sound carried. The kitchen light was on. I could see its reflection in the hallway mirror. The back door was 10 feet away from me, just past the fridge. Without really thinking, I reached over and switched the kitchen light off. The whole apartment dropped into that flat blue darkness you only get after midnight. Street light from the parking lot leaked through the blinds in thin lines. Everything suddenly looked unfamiliar. I texted back, "What are you talking about?" Nothing. I waited maybe 15 seconds, then called the number. It rang once and went dead. That was the moment I should have locked every door, shut off my phone, and called the police. Instead, I did what people always do when something doesn't make sense. I tried to make it make sense. I told myself some idiot was messing with me. Maybe a neighbor sent it to the wrong number. Maybe it was meant for someone in the building behind mine. Maybe I was about to feel stupid for getting nervous over a random text. Then my back door handle moved. It was soft. Just one slow press, downward and release. No pounding, no rattling. Just enough to tell me someone on the other side was testing it. I froze so hard it felt like my bones locked. The back door was old and warped, with a bad seal that let cold air in around the edges. In winter, it made this faint whistling sound. Right then, all I could hear was my own breathing and the tiny metal click of the latch settling back into place. Whoever was out there didn't knock, didn't speak, just tried the handle once carefully, like they were checking whether I'd remembered to lock it. I looked at my phone. No new message. I backed away from the door as quietly as I could and went to the living room window. I kept low, barely lifting one slat of the blinds with my fingertip. My backyard was really just a narrow strip of dirt and dead grass boxed in by a fence. There was a motion light above the rear steps, but it hadn't turned on. I couldn't see anyone. That somehow made it worse. My phone buzzed in my hand, so suddenly I almost dropped it. "Do not look through the back window. He'll know you're alone." I felt every hair on my arm stand up. I texted back so fast my hand slipped on the screen. "Who are you? How do you know where I live?" This time the reply took longer, because he was behind you at the gas station and followed your car home. "I thought you were someone else. I'm in the house across the alley. I saw him go to your yard. I read that 5 times. Earlier that night, I had stopped for gas on my way back from work. I even remembered a dark pickup at the next pump and a man standing there with his hood up, not fueling, not moving much. At the time, I only noticed him because he kept looking down like he was texting. I hadn't thought twice about it. Now my stomach folded in on itself. I typed, "Call the police." The answer came right away. I did. They said officers are on the way. Stay away from the back of the apartment. I moved to the front door and checked the deadbolt. Locked. Then I killed the lamp in the living room and stood in darkness, trying to listen without making a sound. My heart was hammering so hard it felt loud enough to hear across the room. A minute passed, maybe 2. Then there was a noise from the kitchen, not the back door this time. It sounded like fingertips dragging lightly across the glass. Slow, patient, almost absent-minded. I covered my mouth with one hand. Whoever was out there knew exactly where I was in the apartment. Or maybe they didn't need to know. Maybe they were just taking their time because they already understood something I didn't. My phone lit again. He moved to the side window. "Don't let him see your screen." I crouched behind the small wall that separated the kitchen from the living room and turned the brightness all the way down. Then I noticed something I hadn't before. The texts weren't coming from a full 10-digit number anymore. On the top of the thread, where the contact information should have been, there was just a name now. Martin. I didn't know any Martin. I tapped it, expecting to see a number. Nothing. Just the name, like it had always been saved that way. My pulse started skidding. I scrolled up through the thread, and the earlier messages were still there, but now they looked older somehow, like they belonged to a conversation I'd already been having. Same gray bubbles, same contact name, no number anywhere. I actually felt dizzy. I told myself it was a phone glitch. It had to be, but I knew what I'd seen 10 minutes earlier. I knew it had been an unsaved number. A new text came through. When the police arrive, do not open the door until they say your full name. He listens. That message hit me in a different way. Until then, I'd been scared of the man outside. Now there was this second person somewhere across the alley, watching my apartment in the dark, knowing details about my life, texting me as if he'd stepped into my phone from nowhere. Then there was a knock at the front door, 3 even taps. I nearly cried from the shock of it. "Police!" a man's voice called, calm, muffled by the door. "Open up." I looked down at my phone. Nothing. Another knock, slightly harder. "Police, open the door." My whole body leaned toward the door before I stopped myself. My name. He hadn't said my name. Then my screen flashed. That isn't them. "Don't move." I backed away so fast my shoulder hit the wall. The knock came again, instantly, like the person outside had heard me. "Ma'am." His tone changed on that one word. Less official, more annoyed. Something brushed against the front window, a shifting shadow just beyond the blinds. He was close enough now that I could hear the faint scrape of his shoe on the concrete outside my door. Then silence. A silence so complete it made the apartment feel buried. I don't know how long it lasted. Long enough for my legs to start shaking. Long enough for me to realize I could hear something from the kitchen again. Very gently, the back door handle turned a second time. Front and back. Not one man. 2. I remember sliding down to the floor with my phone clenched so hard it hurt. I couldn't think. Couldn't even decide which direction to face. The first real wave of panic hit then. Huge and hot and useless. Then red and blue lights swept across the front wall. Actual sirens. Not close at first, then closer. Tires on wet pavement. Car doors. Voices. The knock at my front door came again. Louder this time. "Emily Carter." "Police department. Emily Carter, come to the door." He said my full name. I stumbled up and unlocked it with numb fingers. 2 officers were standing there, one with his hand resting near his holster, the other already looking past me into the apartment. They came in fast, cleared the back, checked the yard, the side gate, the alley. One of them asked if I was alone. The other asked who had warned me. I held up my phone and said, "Martin." The officer looked at the screen for a second, then at me. "There's no text thread open," he said. I took the phone back so quickly I nearly dropped it. He was right. My messages app was open, but the conversation was gone. Not deleted, not buried, gone. There was no Martin, no unknown number, no recent texts at all except a delivery confirmation from that afternoon. I started trying to explain. Talking too fast, hearing how crazy it sounded as it left my mouth. Gas station, the back door, the fake police knock, the alley, the name on the thread. The officer listened without interrupting, but I could tell from his face that he believed only the parts he could work with. They found footprints in the dirt behind the fence, 2 sets. They found marks on the back doorknob and the screen by the kitchen window. They said it looked like someone had definitely been there. And at the front, under the window, they found a cigarette butt still warm. So that part was real. Before they left, I asked if they'd talked to anyone across the alley, anyone who might have called first, anyone named Martin. The older officer hesitated. Then he said the house across the alley was empty. It had been empty for almost 2 months. An older man had lived there alone. Heart attack in his recliner. Neighbors said he was quiet, kept to himself, always by the window at night, looking out toward the apartments like he was watching over the block. His name was Martin. I moved out 3 days later. I changed my number, changed apartments, changed every dumb little habit that made me easy to find. I never heard anything more from the police except that they never identified the 2 men. No cameras caught a plate. No one in the area recognized them. It just became one more report filed under attempted break-in. But every now and then, usually a little after midnight, I still wake up and check my phone for no reason. And twice since that night, on 2 different phones with 2 different numbers, I found a message waiting for me from a contact I never saved. No number, just the name. Martin. The first one said, "Don't answer the door." The second said, "You need curtains in the bedroom." The first text came in while I was at work, right in the middle of closing. I was behind the counter counting the drawer when my phone buzzed across the laminate. I almost ignored it because the number wasn't saved, but the preview caught my eye. If you see him before I get there, do not let him inside." I picked up the phone and frowned at it for a second, waiting for the rest of the message to load, like maybe it would explain itself. It didn't. Just that one line sitting there on the screen with the kind of urgency that makes your stomach tighten before your brain has decided whether it's serious. I texted back, "Wrong number." A few seconds passed. Then, "You still live at the yellow house, right? Please tell me you haven't opened the door for him." For a second, I honestly thought one of my friends was messing with me. It wasn't impossible. I was 26, living alone for the first time in a small rental house just outside town, and most of my friends thought it was hilarious that I checked the locks 3 times every night and kept a baseball bat under my bed even though the neighborhood was quiet. But then I read the message again. The yellow house. My house was yellow, not bright yellow, more faded, old paint, almost beige in daylight. But from the road, especially under the porch light at night, it definitely looked yellow. I stared at the number, trying to place it. Local area code, no contact photo, nothing familiar. I typed, "Who is this?" No response. My manager was in the back, locking up the office, so I stepped away from the register and called the number. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. No name, just the automated voice. I hung up without leaving a message and stood there listening to the hum of the coolers and the buzz of the fluorescent lights above me. That should have been the end of it. Weird text, wrong number, maybe someone confused about an address. But once something reaches into your life and gets one detail right, it becomes hard to shrug off. I texted my neighbor, Mrs. Harlan, who lived 2 houses down and noticed everything. "Hey, weird question. Has anyone been around my place tonight?" She didn't answer immediately. The unknown number did. "I'm serious. Do not go inside alone." That was the exact moment my skin went cold. Not because of the message itself, but because I had not told this person I was on my way home. I looked toward the dark front windows of the convenience store, where my car was parked under the lot light. My shift ended at 11. It was 10:56. I typed, "How do you know I'm not home?" The typing bubble appeared, stopped, appeared again, then nothing. My manager came out, said goodnight, and left through the back. Suddenly, I didn't want to walk to my car alone. I hated that feeling instantly. Hated that a random text had managed to control my next thought. I waited until his truck pulled around front, then hurried to my car and locked the doors as soon as I got in. The drive home usually took 12 minutes. That night, it felt longer because I kept checking the mirrors. Every pair of headlights behind me seemed too steady, too interested. By the second red light, I had convinced myself I was being stupid. By the third, I had convinced myself I wasn't. When I turned onto my road, my phone buzzed again in the cup holder. "Don't pull into the driveway if the porch light is on." I almost missed the turn because I looked down too fast. My porch light was on. I never left it on. I was weird about electricity bills and even weirder about routines. I turned that light off every morning before leaving, and if I came home after dark, I parked first, then turned it on from the app connected to the smart bulb in the front room. I never left the exterior light running all day. I drove past the house instead of turning in. From the road, everything looked normal. Small yellow place, white trim, narrow front porch, one car in the driveway. Mine wasn't there, obviously. Curtains drawn, porch light glowing warm over the steps, and my front door was slightly open, only an inch, maybe 2, just enough to cut the dark shape of the entryway into a crooked black line. I kept driving. My hands were shaking on the wheel so hard I had to grip with both hands to keep the car steady. I made it to the end of the road, turned into an empty church parking lot, and killed the headlights. Then I called 911. While it rang, another text came in. "Good. Stay where you are. He wants you to come in and notice something's wrong too late." The dispatcher answered, and I told her everything in a rush that made me sound half hysterical and half embarrassed. Strange texts. Door open, possibly someone inside. She asked if I saw anyone. I said no. She asked if I could safely stay where I was. I said yes. She told me deputies were on the way. I kept looking up from my phone to the dark road leading back toward the house. Then I asked the question that had been pressing harder and harder at the inside of my skull. "Can you tell me if the call came from a number near my address?" I asked the dispatcher, or if maybe someone else already reported something. She said she couldn't see that yet. Officers would speak to me when they arrived. My phone buzzed again. "When they get there, tell them to check the hall closet first." I stared at the message so long the screen dimmed. There was a hall closet just inside the front door. Tiny, shallow, mostly coats, and an old vacuum. You could hide in it, but not comfortably. The idea of someone standing in that narrow, dark space, listening for me to come home and lock the door behind me, made something inside me feel physically sick. Red and blue lights finally turned onto the road and washed over the church sign. I almost cried from relief. 2 deputies met me in the parking lot. I showed them the messages while explaining everything. One took my phone and scrolled through the thread, expression flattening with each new text. The other asked if I had recently broken up with anyone, had problems with a neighbor, knew anyone who might have access to my house. I said no to all of it. They drove to my place with me following at a distance. One deputy stayed with me outside while the other approached the front porch with his flashlight and sidearm drawn. The front door was still open that same inch or two. He called out. No answer. Then they went in. I watched from near the curb, every nerve in my body stretched so tight it felt painful. The search took less than 4 minutes. When they came back out, the deputy near me said, "No one inside." I actually laughed once, short and ugly from pure release. My knees felt weak. Then he added, "But someone was definitely in there." My relief died so fast it was almost dizzying. The house looked wrong the moment I stepped inside with them. Not overturned, not trashed, just disturbed in small, deliberate ways. My bedroom door was open, though I always kept it closed because of the draft. One kitchen chair had been moved near the hallway. A glass from my cabinet sat half full of tap water on the coffee table. The bathroom light was on. The deputy opened the hall closet. There were muddy prints on the floor between my winter coats. Not huge, not dramatic. Just enough to show somebody had stood there, turning slightly, shifting their weight, watching the front door. I had to sit down on the arm of the couch because for a second I thought I might pass out. They searched the yard too. Found a scuffed patch beneath my bedroom window and marks near the back gate. No obvious forced entry. One of the windows over the kitchen sink didn't always latch right, and I guess that was enough. The deputy handed my phone back and asked me again who the texts were from. "I don't know," I said. He looked at the thread. They knew the house. They knew the closet. He nodded once. "Yeah." Then his expression changed. He turned the phone toward me and said, "Is this the whole conversation?" I looked down. It wasn't. The thread now only showed my first message, wrong number, and one reply. "Sorry. Ignore that." Everything after that was gone. I felt my face drain. "No," I said. "No, there were more." He looked at me for a second, and I could see that careful shift people make when they start considering stress, panic, maybe misremembering. Not dismissing me completely, but moving me out of the reliable category. "I just read them," I said. "You saw them." The other deputy stepped in then and said quietly, "I did." That kept me from feeling completely insane. They photographed the closet, took my statement, and suggested I stay somewhere else for the night. I packed a bag while they waited outside. Before leaving, I checked every room again, even though I knew they had already cleared them, because once the idea of someone being in your house gets into your mind, your house stops feeling like yours. I stayed with my older sister across town for the next few days. Nothing happened the first night, or the second. By the third, I was angry enough at the whole thing to start acting normal again. The deputies had no suspect, no cameras, no stolen property, no explanation for the texts. Just a report and a suggestion to change the window latches and maybe get a dog. On the fourth day, I went back to the house in daylight to pick up more clothes for work. Everything was quiet, sun out, lawn bright, normal traffic on the road. I almost felt stupid again for how scared I'd been. Inside, the place smelled closed up and stale. I walked room to room, gathering things, trying not to think about that glass of water, that closet, the moved chair. I was zipping my bag in the bedroom when my phone buzzed in my back pocket. I checked it without thinking. Unknown number. Did they find the crawl space? I don't think I've ever gone that cold that fast in my life. I looked at my bedroom floor, then the walls, then the ceiling. Like the words themselves had changed the structure of the room. My house didn't have a basement, no attic you could stand in, just a cramped crawl space access panel in the laundry room, low to the ground behind a folding door. I backed into the hallway and kept my eyes on that door as I called 911 again. The dispatcher must have heard something in my voice because she stayed on the line the whole time, told me to get outside immediately, told me not to check anything myself. I was halfway to the front door when I heard it, a sound from the laundry room, not loud, just a small, dull bump like someone had shifted their knee against wood. I ran. I got outside so fast I left my bag and keys behind. I crossed the yard barefoot on gravel because I'd kicked my shoes off in the bedroom and forgotten them. By the time the deputies arrived, I was standing in the road shaking so hard I couldn't hold the phone steady. They went in with weapons drawn this time, and this time they found him. He was under the house, not trapped, not sleeping there by accident, living there at least for a little while. There were water bottles, food wrappers, a flashlight, and a blanket. He'd been getting in through the loose panel under the back steps and pulling it shut behind him. The deputy later told me the crawl space ran farther than expected beneath the center of the house, enough for someone thin to move around if they stayed low. They dragged him out in cuffs covered in dirt and insulation. I only saw him for a second from across the yard, but it was enough. Mid-30s maybe, greasy hair, blank face, not angry, not wild-eyed, just irritated. Like the whole thing had become inconvenient. I kept waiting for the worst part of the story to be over. It wasn't, because when they searched him, they found no phone, not in his pockets, not in the crawl space, not anywhere in the house. And when an investigator later asked to see the message that had warned me about the crawl space, it was gone too, just like the others. The number still showed in my recent notifications on the lock screen, but when I opened my messages, there was nothing there. No thread, no deleted conversation, no blocked contact, nothing. The man from under my house never gave them much. He admitted entering, admitted hiding in the closet the first night, admitted waiting for me to come home. But when they asked why he left the front door cracked, why he moved the chair, why he stayed under the house after police had already searched it once, he either smirked or said nothing. And when they asked whether he had an accomplice, someone watching the house, someone texting me, he laughed. The investigator told me later that his exact words were, "If somebody warned her, it wasn't anybody with me." I moved after that. I didn't care about the lease, the money, the inconvenience, any of it. I left. My sister helped me pack, and my dad paid to break the contract. For a while, I slept with every light on no matter where I stayed. People always ask me, when I tell them the story, who I think was texting me. They want it to be some neighbor, some witness, someone in a parked car who noticed a stranger at my house and got involved but didn't want to come forward. I wanted that too for a long time, because it keeps the story in the world of things that make sense. But there's one part I never know whether to mention because it's the part that makes people stop believing me. A week after I moved, I went back one last time with my landlord to hand over the keys. The house was empty, totally empty. Fresh paint in the bedroom where they'd had to cut part of the wall to inspect for more access space. New latch on the kitchen window. Quiet, clean, finished. While my landlord was in the front room, I stepped into the laundry area and looked at the crawl space panel. Someone had written on the inside of the folding door, not scratched, not carved, written in black marker in small, careful letters, as if they'd had plenty of time. "You weren't the one I meant to text." It started with a text that said, "Don't tell mom where I am. I just need one night." I was in the checkout line at a grocery store when it came through, standing there with a basket full of things I didn't really need and half listening to a little kid cry near the registers. The message came from a number I didn't know, but the wording hit something familiar right away. It sounded like family, desperate, careless, already halfway into a problem. I read it twice, then typed back, "I think you have the wrong number." A minute passed. The cashier asked paper or plastic. I said plastic without looking up. Then the phone buzzed again. "Ashley, please. I know she'll call you first. Just say you haven't heard from me. My name isn't Ashley." I remember standing there with my wallet in my hand, suddenly not hearing the grocery store anymore. The crying kid, the scanner beeping, the cashier talking to the woman behind me, everything dropped back, like someone had closed a door between me and the rest of the world. I texted, "Not Ashley. Wrong person." The response came before I had even walked out of the store. "Sorry." That should have been it. And honestly, for the first 10 minutes, it was. I put my phone in the cup holder, drove home, carried my groceries inside, and forgot about it while I was putting things away. I lived in a second-floor apartment above a locksmith shop. Old building, thin walls, narrow stairwell that always smelled faintly like dust and hot metal. Not a bad place. Just one of those apartments that never really felt modern no matter how clean you kept it. I was putting a carton of eggs in the fridge when the phone buzzed again. "Did she answer you?" I just stared at it. Then, Ashley? Then another one before I could respond. Please tell me you didn't bring her with you. This one made me stop moving. There was something different about the tone now. The first message had felt panicked. This one felt cautious, not confused, not like somebody who had texted the wrong person and hadn't realized it, more like somebody trying to confirm a detail without revealing too much. I set the eggs down and typed, "You still have the wrong number. Stop texting me." This time there was no immediate reply. I locked my apartment door without really thinking about it. Then I laughed at myself for doing it. I lived alone, and living alone does something weird to your brain. It teaches you how quickly silence can turn against you. A random sound from the hallway becomes footsteps. A neighbor trying the wrong key downstairs becomes somebody testing your lock. The building settling at night becomes movement. So I told myself that was all this was. One of those little moments where your mind starts building tension around nothing. I finished putting the groceries away, changed into sweatpants, turned on the TV, and tried to shake it off. At 9:14, the text came through. "She found me before. If she's with you, don't let her in. She'll sound calm." That's how she does it. I read that message so many times the words started to lose meaning. Then there was a knock at my door. Not loud, just 3 soft taps. My whole body went still. I looked at the TV, still playing some rerun I wasn't watching. Looked at the front door, looked at my phone. Another knock. I didn't move closer. I called out, "Yeah?" A woman's voice answered from the hall. "Hi, sorry to bother you. I'm looking for Ashley. I might have the wrong apartment." That was the exact moment the air changed in the room, because the texts had already used that name. I didn't answer right away. The woman knocked again, still polite. "I'm so sorry, she's my niece. I think she may have come here by mistake." I backed away from the door as quietly as I could and looked through the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway under the weak yellow ceiling light, maybe late 40s, nice coat, purse over one shoulder, calm face, not angry, not frantic. She even smiled faintly, like she knew this was awkward and wanted to make it easier for both of us. But she was looking directly at the peephole, not at the door, at the peephole. My phone buzzed in my hand hard enough to make me flinch. "Do not answer her." I stepped back so fast I nearly hit the small entry table behind me. The woman in the hall waited a few more seconds, then spoke again. Same level voice. "Ashley, I know you're upset, but you don't need to make this worse." I wanted to believe it was a coincidence. I wanted to believe there was really some Ashley in the building, and I'd been pulled into a stupid, uncomfortable misunderstanding. Then the woman tried my doorknob, just once, gently, like she expected it to open. I stumbled backward and immediately called 911. My voice came out thin and shaky, and I hated that, but I told the dispatcher exactly what was happening. Wrong number texts. Woman at the door asking for Ashley. She tried the handle. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way and asked if I could stay inside with the door locked. While I was on the phone, the woman stopped knocking. I went to the living room and stood far enough back from the windows that nobody outside could see me. From there, I could still see the front door and part of the kitchen. The whole apartment suddenly felt too small, like there weren't enough walls between me and anything. Then a new text appeared. "If she leaves, don't think it's over. She doesn't like waiting in hallways." A minute later, I heard footsteps on the stairs outside, slow, measured, heading down. I told the dispatcher I thought the woman had left. Then came another sound from the back of the apartment. A soft scrape, metal against metal. My kitchen window opened onto the fire escape. I don't know why that possibility hadn't hit me before, but when it did, it landed like ice water down my spine. I moved toward the kitchen and stopped dead before I reached the corner. The window over the sink was covered by cheap blinds, and one of the slats was bent upward. I could see darkness beyond it, and the shape of fingers curling around the bottom of the frame from outside. I made a sound I didn't mean to make, something between a gasp and a shout. The fingers vanished instantly. The dispatcher was telling me to stay away from the window. Officers were close. I backed into the living room again, gripping the phone so tightly my hand ached. Then a voice came from outside the kitchen window. Still calm, still almost kind. "You don't need to be scared," the woman said. "I'm just trying to bring her home." I couldn't answer, couldn't breathe right. Every part of my attention was fixed on that window and the thought of her standing on the fire escape, one pane of glass away from my kitchen. My phone buzzed again. "She isn't my aunt." Another text, right after it. "She killed Ashley in March." I actually stopped functioning for a second after reading that. My brain just refused to move forward. The words didn't fit into reality. They had nowhere to go. Before I could process them, I heard the front door downstairs slam open and heavy footsteps hit the stairwell. Male voices. Fast. Loud. Police. The woman at the kitchen window moved immediately. I heard the quick metallic rattle of the fire escape stairs, the sudden change in her breathing. Then nothing. Officers came up, cleared the hallway. Then the apartment. Then the roof access. They took my phone, read the messages, and went looking for the woman, but she was gone. Whoever she was, she knew the building better than I did. There was an alley behind the shop and a service ladder leading down from the far end of the escape. By the time officers reached street level, she had disappeared into the block. I gave my statement twice that night, once in the apartment and once downtown because they took it more seriously after running the details. There had been a missing woman named Ashley Donnelly from a town 2 hours away, missing since March. Her family had said she sometimes disappeared for a few days at a time, so the case hadn't moved quickly at first. Then it stalled. No body, no obvious suspect, nothing strong enough to force the story into the wider news. But there was a person connected to it. Ashley's aunt, a woman named Karen Donnelly, questioned, never charged. I asked the detective why. He said because suspicion is not proof. I asked if they had a photo. When he showed me, I already knew. Same coat, same calm face, same polite expression, the kind of face you would apologize to if you bumped into it in a hallway. I thought that would be the end of my part in it. Statement given. Strange coincidence. Wrong number text that accidentally landed with me instead of whoever Ashley had actually meant to contact before something happened to her. But 2 weeks later, after I had started sleeping again and almost convinced myself the worst part was over, I got one final message from the same unknown number. No greeting, no explanation, just one line. I wasn't texting the wrong person. Ashley lived in your apartment before you. The text arrived at 1:07 in the morning while I was lying in bed, half asleep, with the TV still glowing silently across the room. It said, I made it inside. Don't text back. He checks your phone. I remember blinking at it for a few seconds, not fully awake yet, trying to understand what I was reading. The number wasn't saved, no contact name, just a local area code, and that message sitting there, like I was supposed to know exactly what it meant. I typed wrong number, then I deleted it. Something about the message bothered me enough that I didn't send it. Maybe it was the phrasing. Maybe it was how specific it felt. I locked my phone and set it on my chest, listening to the quiet in my apartment. I lived in an older building on the 3rd floor, 12 units total. To the kind of place where you gradually learn everyone's routines without ever really meeting them. The guy across from me showered at 5:30 every morning. Someone downstairs played music too loud on Fridays. Unit 3B, right under mine, had a couple who fought in short bursts and then went completely silent for days. At 1:08, another message came in. Seriously, don't answer. If this is still her number, just read this and stay quiet. That woke me up completely. I sat up in bed and looked at the number again. Still unfamiliar, still local. Then another message. He's asleep in the living room right now. I'm in the bathroom with the fan on. I stared at the screen long enough for it to dim. There are some wrong number texts you can laugh off. This wasn't one of them. This felt like I had opened a door and found somebody on the other side already waiting. I told myself it could still be fake, a prank, some weird attempt to scare strangers. But even then, I couldn't shake the image it put in my head. Someone hiding in a locked bathroom, lights off, typing with both thumbs, while somebody dangerous slept 10 feet away. I should have called the police immediately. Instead, I made the mistake people always make first. I tried to understand it. I sent one message. Who is this? The reply came so fast it felt like the person had been staring at the screen waiting for me to mess up. I told you not to text. If he wakes up, I'm dead. I actually said sorry out loud to an empty room. Then the typing bubble appeared and disappeared 3 different times before a new message landed. Listen carefully. I took this phone from her purse because mine is downstairs. I think this is her old number. I saw your wallpaper for a second when it lit up. You're not her, but please help me anyway. A minute later, call 911. Tell them 214 Merrick Avenue, apartment 2. Back unit. Tell them there's a woman trapped in the bathroom. Don't mention texting, just do it. I was already out of bed before I finished reading it. The crazy part wasn't the message, it was the address. 214 Merrick Avenue was my building. Apartment 2 was 2B, directly below me. I went cold all over. I don't know how long I stood there beside my bed, phone in hand, listening to the hum of the TV and the faint rattle of the air conditioner in the window. Everything in the room suddenly felt too sharp and too quiet. The apartment under mine was supposed to be empty. The last tenant had moved out maybe 6 weeks earlier. I knew because the landlord had complained to me twice about having to repaint after water damage. No one should have been in 2B. I walked into the hallway of my apartment and stood still, listening. At first I heard nothing. Then, very faintly from below, a thud. Not loud enough to identify, just something heavy shifting or bumping against a wall. My phone buzzed again. "Did you call?" I backed away from the floor like that would somehow put more distance between me and whatever was under me. Then I called 911. I kept my voice low without even meaning to, like the floorboards could carry it. I told the dispatcher there was a woman messaging me from the apartment below mine saying she was trapped and that there might be a man in there with her. The dispatcher asked for my name, my apartment number, whether I could hear anything, whether I knew the people involved. I said no. I said the unit was supposed to be vacant. She paused at that. Then she said officers were on the way. I thought maybe that would calm me down. It didn't. Another text came in. He's moving. Then, he's awake. Then nothing. I stood in my kitchen staring at the back stairs through the narrow window in the door, waiting to hear sirens. Every second stretched. I considered going downstairs, not because I thought it was smart, but because standing still felt impossible. But every time I pictured opening my apartment door, I imagined somebody already halfway up the stairwell. Then I heard it. A sound from the hallway outside my unit. Soft footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming up. My apartment door was locked, but it was old cheap wood with a deadbolt that never felt solid enough. I backed away from it and held my breath. The footsteps stopped right outside. No knock, no voice, just silence. Then my phone lit up again. He's gone. My eyes snapped from the screen to the door. A shadow slid across the gap at the bottom. I don't think I breathed for the next 10 seconds. I just stood there in the dark kitchen holding the phone and staring at that thin line beneath the door, while the person on the other side did absolutely nothing. No handle, no whisper, no movement, just standing there. Then, as quietly as it had appeared, the shadow moved away. The footsteps continued upward, toward the roof access. A second later, my phone buzzed again. I heard him go upstairs. "Did you call?" I couldn't even type. My fingers were numb. I just sent yes and watched it deliver. What happened next is the part I still replay the most because even now I can't decide which detail bothers me more. The first police officer knocked on my door less than 2 minutes later. He said, "Police department." I opened it immediately. He came in with another officer behind him, and I started talking too fast, telling them everything at once. The messages, the vacant apartment downstairs, the footsteps, the shadow under the door, someone going up toward the roof. One officer stayed with me while the other went down to 2B and called for backup. I was still explaining when my phone buzzed again. I looked down expecting another message from the woman. Instead it said, "He's in your apartment." I turned so fast I nearly dropped the phone. The officer near me must have seen my face change because he said, "What is it?" And right then, from my bedroom, something moved. Not a huge noise, just the unmistakable sound of a floorboard taking weight. The officer drew his weapon instantly and moved past me toward the bedroom with a speed I still think about sometimes. Everything after that happened in flashes. Another officer coming up the stairs, commands being shouted, my own body pressed against the kitchen wall so hard it hurt. They found a man crouched in the space between my bed and the wall. He had come in earlier through the fire escape window in the living room. I rarely checked that latch because the window painted shut every summer and needed to be forced open. Apparently someone had forced it. He had been inside while I was texting. Inside while I was reading messages about a woman trapped downstairs. Inside while I was standing 10 feet away, trying to listen through the floor. They took him out in cuffs. Mid-30s, thin gray sweatshirt, face blank in that awful way some people have when they're caught and still somehow look more irritated than scared. He wouldn't answer questions, just kept glancing at me like I had ruined something private. Backup searched the roof and 2B. The apartment downstairs wasn't empty after all. Someone had been staying there illegally for at least a few days. air mattress, bottled water, takeout containers, a duffel bag. And in the bathroom, locked from the inside, when officers forced it open, they found a woman sitting in the tub with the fan running. She was alive, barely coherent, bruised, terrified, but alive. The officers took my phone for a while to document the thread. I watched one of them scroll, nodding as he read. So at least that part was real. For once, I had proof. But when they handed it back to me later, after statements and questions and sunrise starting to gray the windows, the conversation looked different. All the messages were still there except one, the first one, the one that had started all of it. I made it inside. Don't text back. He checks your phone. Gone. Not deleted in a way that made sense. Just absent. As if the thread began with her warning me not to answer. I told the detective it had been there. He believed me, or at least he said he did. But he couldn't explain why the message thread would start on the second text unless the first had been manually erased. The woman from downstairs eventually told them what she could. She had grabbed a phone from a purse in the apartment because hers had been taken. She saw an old text chain on the screen and thought she was messaging the previous owner of the phone, someone named Lena, someone she believed used to live in my building. The thing is, I bought that phone brand new 3 months earlier. No used hardware. No restored backup from anyone else. New number 2. There should not have been any old thread to open. There definitely should not have been an unsent draft already sitting in the message box when she unlocked it. But that's what she told police. An unsent message. Already typed. I made it inside. Don't text back. He checks your phone. She said she thought she had written it herself in a panic and forgotten. That was the only reason she hit send. I moved out before the month ended. I didn't want to sleep another night above an apartment I had believed was empty while strangers lived and hid beneath me. I didn't want to wonder whether anyone else had ever been inside my place without me knowing. And I never stopped thinking about that first message. Not because it saved her, not because it saved me. Because whoever wrote it knew something impossible. It didn't say, "I'm trapped downstairs." It didn't say, "Call the police." It said, "I made it inside," as if the person sending it had been trying to warn someone about getting into my apartment long before I ever knew there was anyone below me at all.